Welcome to this conversation, and thank you for joining me. Perhaps we could just go around the room and say who we are, and then we're going to have a conversation about Holocaust Memorial Day. So my name is Ian Worsfold. I'm the coordinating chaplain at City University of London, coordinating our multi-faith team.
Hello everyone, so my name is Zach Lane. I am the president of City Students Union, and so I'm the sort of visible representation and leadership of 19,000 odd students.
My name's Kayla, and I'm part of City's Christian Union Committee.
Hi, I'm Gavin, and I'm the Jewish chaplain at City University.
So we're going to have a conversation about Holocaust Memorial Day, which is an annual event. I'm going to come to you, Gavin, first. Can you just explain to us a bit about what Holocaust Memorial Day is?
Okay, so Holocaust Memorial Day is the day that was instituted by the government to remind us of the Holocaust and everything that was perpetrated through the Holocaust and other genocides as well. They chose this particular date because this is the date that Auschwitz or Auschwitz-Birkenau was liberated. So they had to find a date, well, didn't have to find a date, which is going to be significant and that people could actually focus on, and it has become an important date in the calendar.
Thank you. And then, Zach Lane, so this is an event that marks an occasion that happened more than 75 years ago. Why do you think it's still important to mark it today?
Well, the reality is, Ian, that the Holocaust in itself was, one of the biggest crimes, if not in history, in the 20th century. And at the time when it happened, world leaders eventually came together and said, never again. The world's going to get together to make sure, through the likes of the League of Nations and all these international bodies, the United Nations. But the reality is, I think that the world hasn't learned its lesson about tolerance, about fascism, and about hate and discrimination, which leads up to, crimes against humanity, such as the Holocaust. Unfortunately, in recent decades, we haven't seen an end to that violence. To the same violence which builds up to the likes of genocide. And at more recent things, we can see what's happening in other parts of the world. The plights of the Uyghur people in Xinjiang in China. During the 90s, you had the massacres in Srebrenica, and all across the world. I don't think it's limited to the global south, but also in the global north. There are so many examples of oppression and injustice that prevail on a daily basis. And the reality is, until we can learn to accept that we are also part of the problem, and that we haven't learned from the past, we cannot move forward. And I think remembering incidents like the Holocaust, events like the Holocaust, enable us to perhaps reinstill a level of humility in ourselves, and to understand that it's each and every single person's job to ensure that we're creating a better and more fairer world.
Thanks, Zach Lane. I'm aware of a quote, I'm not sure who said it, but somebody said the only thing we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. So that's it on a global scale, then Zach Lane, you've been talking about. Why should we be thinking about it at City? You've said you have responsibility for 19,000 students. So why should we be thinking about it at City particularly then, if it's a big global thing?
Well, what I love about City is how diverse we are as an institution. We've got students from, I'd like to think every world, all faiths, backgrounds, cultures, be it international students from the European Union, home students as well. And I think having such a diverse body of students, not just in terms of ethnicity and nationality, but faith or no faith, I should say, gives us a unique opportunity to actually instill the values needed to sort of create the leaders of tomorrow. I think a lot of the times that there happen to be sort of misunderstandings and miscommunication between different communities. A lot of it can be fueled sort of by the media at times. And I think the reason it's so important here at City is, our students will go on to be the future politicians, the future academics and teachers and lawyers and we'll go to every pocket of society. And so if it isn't important to City, then essentially what are we here for? Why are we here as an institution? We are here to educate generations, regardless of faith, background, or culture. And on the topic of faith, I think we have a massive community of students who belong to, for example, the Abrahamic faiths. We have a lot of Muslim students. We've got a community of Jewish students and a visible presence of Christian students as well. When look at ways that we can sort of increase interfaith dialogue and carry these things forward is phenomenally important once again. Not just for City, but for the Students' Union as well.
Thanks, Hecling. And with that in mind, with the visibility of the different faiths, and given that a Holocaust did involve different groups of people, but predominantly it was sort of targeted towards Jewish people. Kayla, I wonder what the significance of the day has for you as a Christian.
Yes, I think going off Saklane's point, definitely just remembering the Holocaust in itself. And like you were saying, the only way to learn from history is to learn from history. I think it was one of the most horrific events that have happened in history. And I think it's important that we don't forget, because I feel like the moment you forget those horrific events is when it tends to repeat itself. And as a Christian as well, like we in our faith, we even teach that it's important to stand up for the oppressed and to seek justice for the oppressed as well. We really believe that no one should go it alone. Like whenever you see injustice, you should always actually try and stand up for that person. So as a Christian, I think just looking at this event and seeing how horrific it was, and I think just in general, if you ever do see such things, because like Sakline was saying as well, it's still going on, not just with Jews, but in China with Muslims in certain provinces. It's not getting the same coverage it is, but I'm glad that I'm seeing people post it and talk about it on social media, because that is a way that we are increasing awareness of these issues. So I think it's important that we don't forget what's happened in the past, so that we don't repeat the same mistakes in the future.
Thank you, Kayla. There's a theme that's assigned to Holocaust Memorial Day each year, and this year's theme is "Be the Light in the Darkness." I'm just going to come to each of you and just say a little bit about how that resonates with you within your faith tradition. What's that saying to you, be the light in the darkness? Gavin, I wonder if you could offer your reflections on that first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'd like to piggyback onto what has been said. And it's I don't know, intellectually interesting to be able to reflect on what has happened in history. And to project it further, to internalize it. And I think the internalizing is the difficult bit. I have been onto a trip, and I have stood on the grounds of Auschwitz now. It's very different actually being there and seeing the cell blocks and seeing the gas chambers and seeing everything that's there. For one, against those that are sort of go around denying that it happened at all. I think the evidence is there. We've got the Holocaust survivors that are telling their stories and so on. But I think more importantly, and being that light in the darkness is actually internalizing what happened. There's a tremendous story about one of the great rabbis that was in one of the camps, Rabbi Halberstam, and he witnessed much that was, well, everything that was going on, the hard labor, and also the desecration. He of a tractor that was picking up an open Bible scroll, the Torah scroll, scooping up together with the rubble and dumping it in a pit. The Bible is our main source of inspiration, and he's seeing that as being desecrated and being destroyed, and seeing the difficulties that people are going through. And an individual came up to him and he said, "Rabbi, I see you muttering all the time." They said that he would mutter his prayers and psalms and as much as he could. And the individual said to him, says, Rabbi, he says, how can you do that in this godless place, number one, and number two, how can you say in your prayers, that God has chosen you as exemplary? Well, as it says in Fiddler and the Roof, chosen, well, maybe God choose somebody else. So in which way do you chosen? It's far better to relinquish all of this. And the rabbi thought for a minute, and he said, that verse which quotes, you have chosen us from amongst the nations. He said there was something that I probably until today had hard time to believe in. Maybe I had a little lack of devotion whenever I said that. But now that I'm witnessing what I'm witnessing, and I can see the depravity and the level to which a human can sink, then I can say with full intention, thank you, God, that you have given me a better moral system, a better ethical system, and something which I can attune myself to, and something which I can have as a goal, and something which I can hold on to as a belief. And I think that that's a very important message that does come out from this tragedy, the Holocaust in particular, and other tragedies that have happened throughout time, and as is mentioned, happening in our own time, is to be able to turn around and say that I should rise above it, and what's more, I should be able to see that light and be able to take that torch and to pass it on. So when I turn around to other individuals and I say to them, this is not normal behavior. As Rabbi Halberstam said, I'm if nothing else, I'm pleased that I'm not a Nazi, because the depravity for which that has sunk to is something which I never want to, and hope that never will, and want to try other people that they should rise above it as well. And I think that when we use in each year the Holocaust Memorial Foundation, they come up with a theme, and I think it's a very important theme that they're using this year, of be a light in the darkness. And I think each of us, everybody in their own way, is a light. They should learn to appreciate that they are such, and that they should try and shed that light as well. That light spreads far away, and I think particularly, as Sakhalin mentioned, with the diversity which we have in City University, people from literally all over the world, on freshers would pin the little flags of each person and each nationality and each religion, culture, and faith onto that map. It really is all embracing, and it's a tremendous opportunity. And I think we really got to take that by the, grab it firmly, and actually be proactive in shedding that light.
Thanks, Gavin. And those voices from Auschwitz are so powerful and almost tragically inspirational as to how they faced up to those atrocities. So thank you for reminding us of part of that story too. And so you're saying something about internalizing it and owning it, and for the individual themselves. What about you, Kayla? How does that speak to you? Be the light in the darkness from your faith tradition.
Yeah, I really like that phrase, I must say. I think it's important. I think, especially in this day and age, the world can be a very dark place for many people. And I think even just, in this time of the pandemic and lockdown and whatnot, a lot of people have experienced, they have been through a dark place. They've been through either loss or they've been through isolation. And I feel like in general, the world's condition can be quite a dark place. But there's actually a Bible verse that comes to me every single time I think about the light, and it says, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In this way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. And that verse really speaks to me, because I think amongst being in a world that can be so full of hatred and crime and injustice, you know that you have something within you that can, even if it just brings a smile to someone's face, that one smile that you can bring to someone's face can literally light up their whole day. So in the same way, I just think it's important that we all shine our light. We all make sure that we can brighten up a room if we can bring joy to someone's life. And yeah, I think that's definitely what stands out to me about that phrase.
Thanks, Kayla. You're bringing a smile to me today, so there we go. And finally, Sakle.
So, I think I'd like to approach this from a faith angle as well, being, a practicing Muslim. I've actually got this quote written on my wall here, and it says, it's from a quote from the Quran, and it's from Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 135, and it literally states, "O you who believe, be persistently standing firm in justice, witnesses for God, even if it be against yourselves or parents and relatives." And for me, it's an immensely powerful quote, because thinking about the Holocaust, thinking about all the actors who were involved, looking at injustices in the decades leading up to 2021, we all have a part to play when we see injustices taking place. And on the topic of sort of being that light in the darkness, there's also a famous hadith which I always refer to from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and it says, whomsoever of you sees an evil action, let them change it with their hand. If you're not able to do so, then with your tongue, and if you're not able to do so, then at least hate it with your heart. And it comes back to that topic of, it doesn't matter who you are, how much perceived authority you have, or what your social state or purchasing power is, you have the ability to enact change and to make sure that you are, as the Rabbi here has said, internalize a lot of these things. And for myself, something I always tell people is, it's always important to start with yourself, to look at yourself and look inwards and actually, renew your intentions almost. Renew your intentions in your approach with people, with other communities, with other faiths, in understanding their plights, in understanding their challenges and difficulties, but then also focusing on sort of building links and bridges for the future. And when I think Great Britain and the United Kingdom, we're heading towards being one of the most diverse nations and capitals even in Europe, if the world. And this entire conversation and internalizing things and being tolerant of one another are not just important in terms of our morality, but I would argue to our existence. So I think it's imperative for everyone to be that light in the darkness, and who knows along the way how many lives we can influence and impact for the better.
Thank you. It's interesting, isn't it? Just putting that word "be" at the beginning, just two small letters, how that transforms that phrase and puts the emphasis on each of us to actually play our part in that. And it's not just about other people; it's about us being the light in the darkness as well. Thank you for this conversation. I wonder if there's just one positive thing that you want to say to those listening today as a message as we mark Holocaust Memorial Day. Obviously, remembering very tragic events. But what's the positive message that you want to give across today as we mark this day? Kayla, can I come to you first?
Yes, of course. I think one thing that I definitely want to say is, even though so many tragic events have happened in the past and are still happening, there will always be better days to come. And even if you yourself are going through something at the moment that feels like a dark time and you're not sure how you're going to get out of it, how it's going to work out for you, I want to just give you hope and encourage you that better days will come, and I'll be praying for you.
Thank you, Kayla. Gavin.
It's interesting. I would very much like to say that there's light at the end of the tunnel. because it's the first thing that comes to mind. But thinking with the pandemic and everything that we're going through, it's very hard to have that. So like the story that I mentioned, and they countless more to do with the Holocaust, but also to do with other tragedies, and even to do with the pandemic that we're in at the moment. And that is, it's far easier to focus on the bad and all the difficulty that comes about. But if we could be like that Rabbi Halberstam, and sort of see the positive and see the very much good that is happening. We don't want it, and we don't wish tragedy and suffering on anybody, and nobody at all. But if we can focus on the positive, and also in that vein take it upon ourselves to embody that and to try and shed that light, then we will all come out far stronger, far better.
Thank you, Gavin and Sakling.
I don't know if I can do justice to how eloquently everyone has spoken so far, but I think that the key takeaway message for myself and for anyone listening is this pandemic has tested everyone to the core. It's tested our communities and the entire world in ways that we hadn't seen. And I guess to use a quote which everyone's probably heard before, it's be the change you want to see. And always reflect and look at the approach you're taking when you see an injustice, and to bring it back to sort of faith for a second, just one more time. In the Quran, much like in Judaism and Christianity, when God commanded Musa or Moses, as some of us may know him, to go and challenge Pharaoh, God didn't instruct Moses to be harsh and to go in all guns blazing almost. It was to first take the approach of being a good person, of speaking with a kind heart and a soft tongue. And so the final note I'd like to end on really is that I think if we embody that kindness and that sense of justice, then our actions will speak for themselves, and hopefully we can work towards living in a world where everyone is treated in fairness and equally.
Thank you, Sakling. Thank you to each of you for taking part in this conversation, which gives me great hope that there are good people in the world and that there is light in the darkness. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much.